Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Today I want to talk about the Supra. However, this week I'm not going to be discussing my Supra. I want to talk about the Mkv Supra. In the automotive community, there's been no car more divisive than the Mkv Supra. Whether you say that it's not a real Supra because it's pretty much made by BMW, or you say that, hey, it's sold by Toyota, it's got the Supra logo and name, therefore it's a Supra. I actually do not want to discuss that argument in this video. What I want to do is discuss why Toyota decided to outsource the majority of its R&D to BMW. Now, you may have read Toyota's press releases, you may have read people's theories, but I fortunately have a very inside track on why Toyota did what it did. A few years ago, I worked on a commercial for the Toyota Mirai, and while I was there, one of the head engineers was from Toyota, was on that shoot, and he was also part of the Toyota Supra project. So I got to have a discussion with him, and he let me in on the real reason why so much of the new Supra was made by BMW. Before I get started on discussing why Toyota decided to outsource the majority of the R&D to BMW, I want to discuss a little bit about me and how I actually ended up in this situation to get this information. It goes back to around 2006 when I was actually studying mechanical engineering before I moved into film and television. At the time, I was really interested in designing engines and was particularly interested in alternative fuel sources. At about that time, hydrogen power was beginning to gain traction as something people were interested in using instead of gasoline or just full electric cars. In studying it, I began to realize hydrogen is what is called a null. Pretty much there's no net gain in energy. The amount of energy it takes to create hydrogen is the same amount of energy it gives off during combustion or during the osmosis process, depending on what system you use. So therefore, it really wasn't a viable source. Whereas gasoline, the amount of energy it takes to refine crude oil into combustible gasoline is minute compared to the amount of energy it gives off during internal combustion. That's why fuel will be a more effective fuel source. So I am now working on a commercial for the Toyota Mirai, which is a hydrogen powered car. And we had the head engineer, or one of the head engineers, on set that day to keep an eye on the car. I saw this as a great opportunity to discuss this with the engineer because I hadn't been in a class in a while, and I was curious if there had been advances in technology that had moved hydrogen beyond a null. So I approached the head engineer, who was a really tall guy actually and spoke very, very well English, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, hydrogen is a null, isn't it? What's going on with this car? And he kind of got this sidelong look at me and he's like, you know about that, huh? I'm like, yeah, I kind of studied mechanical engineering in the past, and I was curious maybe there was advancements in technology I wasn't aware of. He's like, nah, this whole car is just a stunt to make Toyota look better, make them look like they're more interested in the environment and sell more of the other cars. I'm like, aha, I get that. So me and him struck up a conversation. He was a very, very nice guy. And of course, with me at the time, I owned the R32 GTR, but I always loved the Supra. I regretted selling my first one, and I was curious about the new Supra that was coming out. It was still a good 8 months out from release, and we only really knew rumors. And the only rumor we really had was that the engine was going to be a BMW engine, but we didn't know anything else about the car. So I asked him, like, so if you're working on that project, I hear it's going to have a BMW engine. He's like, yeah, it's going to have a BMW engine. And so I decided to ask him, well, the most important question, why? With coming off of a platform like the 7M GTE and the 1JZ and the 2JZ, why would they outsource to BMW? His answer kind of shocked me, actually. He said the reason why is Toyota companies don't want to make sports cars anymore. I mean, that one just kind of blew my mind. I mean, when you think of the 90s, you think of the import tuner crowd. You got the Supras, the RX-7s, the S2000s, all these cars that were just like the it car of the streets at the time. And now Japan doesn't want to make sports cars anymore. And so I had to ask him about that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Japan is known for their small, compact sports cars. And he hit me with this. He said, think about it. What sports cars are coming out of Japan right now? All they want to make is their high MPG family cars. And I had to stop and think, and I'm like, well, let's see here. Toyota, MR2. No, that's gone. Supra, well, technically it was gone at the time. Celica, that's also gone. Okay, aha. What about the FRS BRZ? And he said, yes, that is a sports car, but it's really targeted more towards the teenage and young 20s. I'm like, but it's still a sports car. He's like, yes, that counts. I'm like, okay, I've got one car. Okay, let's think about Nissan. 240SX, gone. Let's see here. Well, they still had the Z car at the time, and I don't know if you really count the new GTR. There's an argument about whether or not it's really a Skyline or if it's just a GTR, but that argument aside, it kind of falls more on the supercar side of the spectrum than a sports car, so we may or may not count that. Like, okay, so Nissan's lost the 240. Okay, what about, Honda? Well, the S2000 was gone, and the Civic at the time, this was before they moved to the new body style and the turbo, they were moving it more towards a family car because they wanted to get out of the idea that they were a street racing car company. Okay, well, finally, Mazda. What about Mazda? Mazda's got good sports cars. Well, let's see here. RX-7 gone. At the time, the Miata was still in the, I believe it was in the NC phase, which really wasn't much, but it's still a sports car. So needless to say, it began to realize he's right. Toyota is not producing the sports cars like they used to in the 90s and early 2000s. Which led me to my next question. Why? If Toyota doesn't want to make sports cars anymore and they only want to make family sedans that get high MPG, why even bother trying to release another car under the Supra banner? The engineer told me, because of the FRS BRZ. That little car reawakened Japan to the fact that there are people out there that still want sports cars that they can have fun with. Not everybody is all about high MPG and family sedan. Therefore, there is an untapped market. The Supra community has been screaming for a new Supra, at least in the US, since '98 when it was discontinued, or 2002 worldwide when the Supra is discontinued there. Due to the pressure that we put on Toyota, as well as the fact that the FRS BRZ sales were so good, Toyota finally relented and said, fine, we will put the Supra back in our lineup. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the story. The head engineer did tell me that despite the fact that there was the huge success of the BRZ FRS and the huge demand from the Supra community, Toyota still doesn't want to make sports cars. They want to stick to making their Camrys, their SUVs, and cars that get high miles per gallon and don't want to be anywhere near a sports car industry. With that in mind, Toyota greenlit the Supra, either hoping it would fail so they could say that it failed and they'll never have to hear the fans scream for a Supra again, or they expected it to fail because they still think people only want family sedans. With that type of mentality, Toyota didn't want to invest any more money into research and development than they absolutely needed to. One of the most expensive components when you develop a new car is the engine. So they didn't want to have to worry about designing a new inline-six turbo when they could go out and find a company that already had one in its lineup. At the time, BMW was the only company that had a viable inline-six turbocharged application that they could sync into the new Supra project. So Toyota approached BMW with the idea of collaborating on a new car. After that conversation, I was obviously very disappointed to find out that the new Supra for sure would be having a BMW engine. However, I did have some hope. Looking at the FRS BRZ, although it does come with the Subaru Boxster engine, it still had Toyota suspension and Toyota interior and a bunch of other little Toyota inspiration and parts in the car. Therefore, the Supra would hopefully still have a bunch of Toyota parts on it. Boy, how wrong I was. I was very fortunate to be invited to the release party for the Supra before it was debuted to the public because I was a Supra owner at the time. Myself, as well as a bunch of other Supra owners, were invited over to the Peterson to take a look at the car before the rest of the public got to see it. And boy, how disappointed we were. We pop the hood and we see BMW logos everywhere. It's stamped into the sheet metal, it's on the engine, it was stamped into the suspension, and even the BMW iDrive. To us, there was not a lot of Toyota in the Supra. However, despite all that, not all hope is lost. In the end of my conversation with the head engineer, I asked him if Toyota would ever consider making an engine for the Supra again, and he said yes. If the car succeeds in spite of itself, in 5 years, Toyota is prepared to consider making another inline-six turbocharged engine for the Supra. Not only that, if they decide to go that route, they will see the reintroduction of the manual transmission. So that's right, if the Supra succeeds, in 5 years, we may see the return of a true Toyota Supra. And there it is, my secret inside information explaining why so much of the new Supra is made by BMW. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and let me know. You can now follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and I'll leave links for those down in the description below. If you have any comments, go ahead and post in the comments section. I will respond to you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all out on the road.